Well, you know, after we graduated, and then after Dick and I were married, we left the state for about 16 years. And we were living in Denver, and we, of course, journeyed back and forth, particularly for UW events, and we would see Jane and Mike at times, and we would always be able to pick up the conversation and sort of keep track of each other. But moving back to Wyoming in 1981, that was just prior to the time, I believe, when Mike ran for state office for the governorship. And so we were well aware of all of his endeavors during a very difficult time economically for this state, and how he can be credited with achieving so much economic diversity. You know, frankly, those times were not unlike the times we're experiencing now, and I think his leadership was so valuable then. The fact that he encouraged coal, the development of coal, and worked on pipelines and transportation, and then tourism, which to this day has become part of the lifeblood of this state, certainly. I remember that when they were in the governor's mansion, that Jane took particular pride in creating some beautiful things for that mansion. The needle-pointed wildflowers, Wyoming wildflowers on the dining room chairs. And I know that she always was so involved in so many important projects on the humanities side of things in the state. So, as I said, you can barely mention Mike without mentioning Jane, because as a couple, they were effective. They could be formidable. When they had a particular goal in mind, they did not let up. And I think all of Wyoming came to love them very much and appreciate them. Well, first of all, Casper is their hometown, and I don't know how many years they've been there. I know that when Mike first went into practice, I believe it was in Cheyenne, and then Laramie, as I recall, and finally Casper. And you know, having been in law practice for 22 years before running for political office, one can only begin to appreciate the impact of his both being an attorney in that town and certainly all of the numerous, I'm sure, nonprofits that they were engaged in. I think that Mike and Jane have a unique way of bringing people together. They're both very genuine and gracious, and yeah, I think the idea of a gathering place honoring them is very appropriate.
In Ireland.
Well, I'm sure others have given you some of those details, but I was a relatively new trustee to the Buffalo Bill Center of the West when we ventured out of the country to Ireland, of all places, as a board. We called it a retreat, and that certainly took us beyond the borders of anything else we had ever experienced. That might have been the first board retreat that I attended, and I was blown away by that opportunity. And to be hosted by Jane and Mike as the ambassadors there was really, really an honor for all of us. I think that the timing of Mike's, if you will, term there was so important, because it was, as we all recall, the negotiation and the putting in place of a peace treaty, bringing some sense of closure to what had been actually decades, if not more than that, of troubles in that country. Mike and Jane seemed perfectly at home in Ireland. Of course, Sullivan in that country is like Smith in our country. So I think that they ran into to lots of Irishmen who loved them very much. And their representation of this country there could not have been more important and more timely. So I think we all can be very appreciative of that. So tell me that word again, I didn't hear it.
Civility.
Stability.
Civility.
Civility, all right.
His ability to bring a sense of civility
Right.
to organizations or
Politics,
polar parties.
conversations, polar parties, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think that is one of his great qualities. I serve with him now on the governing board at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, and he has been chairman of that board since I think 2013. And it has been such a privilege to work with him and to see these qualities, civility, for one, in action. He is very steady. He is such a good listener. And he gives everybody an opportunity. And I think everybody walks away from those moments with a sense of being appreciated and being heard. And I think those are rare qualities in this day and age. Mike is steady. And of course, he has a quick wit. He's charming, and that sense of humor. And at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, we are constantly engaging him as the MC for events, because he brings a grace and charm to every moment. And so, yes, I think civility is a wonderful attribute which he possesses. Well, I so clearly remember when Mike was honored as Citizen of the West by the Denver Stock Show. And he was on stage and he was receiving his cowboy hat. He was making some remarks, and Jane walked up on the stage sort of behind him, joining him. And he kind of sensed that someone was there, but I don't think anyone had necessarily told him that she would be coming on stage. And I just remember he was talking and he sensed someone behind him and he looked around and he said, "Oh, it's you." And then she moved up beside him, and the wonderful pictures in your brochures, I think, might even have come from that moment. There's just such a sense of, first of all, love and respect in that relationship, and always evident. So, in trying to think about some Sullivan-isms, I can't really come up with anything in particular, except that Mike is always quick to say thank you and to express appreciation. And it doesn't matter who is in the room, he will acknowledge the work that someone has done. And it's not always the star power in the room that he acknowledges. It's often those people who have really put the event together, who have made the arrangements. So I think that his ability to be grateful and gracious, and of course, Jane mirrors that as well, is outstanding. Well, I think that Mike would never toot his own horn. I'm sure that in the political arena, that becomes almost it becomes a challenge, because he is humble, and his strength is that while he won't toot his own horn, those qualities shine forth without him having to do that. And I'm sure that this honor in particular, if he had been made aware of it, and if she had been made aware of it, well, they would have been very grateful. They would have said, no, that would not be necessarily something that we would want to promote ourselves for. So I think the lyric will be well served by honoring them. I think that you will have great success because they are beloved and because it is so appropriate that you do so. Well, the iconic cowboy hat. First of all, I don't remember seeing Mike very many times when he doesn't have that on as he enters a building or certainly attends a function. And I think that, you speak about the code of the West. Certainly Mike symbolizes that in so many ways. And I'm sure that it did, while he was in Ireland, cause people to come up and ask him about Wyoming. And in so many ways, I suspect that Jane and Mike found that the people of Ireland were like the people of Wyoming, that there was a genuineness, that there was an understanding of what hard work is, that many of those parts of the Code of the West were just exemplified by Mike and Jane. And so I do think that in many ways they were, although they were serving as ambassadors to Ireland on behalf of the United States, they were taking Wyoming with them and probably had lots of visitors when they returned home.
I know half of Wyoming went to Ireland when he was there. It's like, oh, you went too? You went too?
How did I miss you? Right. They were gracious hosts, that's for certain.
So, unless you have anything other than...
No, yeah, you speak so eloquently. It's nice to, and you're touching on points very thoughtfully.
Well, you both have helped me along the way, and I think I've missed on a few things, but hopefully you've gotten enough out of this that it will be. I'm incredibly honored to have been asked to make a few comments about our friends Mike and Jane Sullivan, and I do it on behalf of my husband Dick Scarlett and myself. We are great admirers of the Sullivans, and we treasure our friendship with them. And we hope that you will join us in honoring them with this wonderful project in Casper, Wyoming. Casper, of course, is the center of the state of Wyoming, and all roads lead to Casper. So in many ways, we can look at this as a Wyoming project, not just a Casper project. But it is, I feel, a very appropriate way to say thank you to two of Wyoming's most prominent and beloved citizens, Mike and Jane Sullivan.